گیسوان چون کمندش واصل عاشق دره. دیدمش من روز اول، دیدمش من روز اول، یک نصد دل دادمش، جلوه‌ای از عشق رسوا نهانم دادمش. لیک چشم ظالم و عاشق کشش را بست و رفت، این دل بیچاره را برد و چرزان دادمش.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this unusual and new setting for 1001 Nights readings. The Music We Are by Rumi, from a book called The Book of Love, and it is translations and commentary by Coleman Barks. Good evening, Joanna. The Music We Are. Did you hear that winter's over? The basil and the carnations cannot control their laughter. The nightingale, back from his wandering, has made singing master over all the birds. The trees reach out their congratulations. The soul goes dancing through the king's doorway. Anemones blush because they have seen the rose naked. Spring, the only fair judge, walks in the courtroom, and several December thieves steal away. Last year's miracles will soon be forgotten New creatures whirl in from non-existence, galaxies scattered around their feet. Have you met them? Do you hear the bud of Jesus crooning in the cradle? A single narcissus flower has been appointed inspector of kingdoms. A feast is set. Listen. The wind is pouring wine. Love used to hide inside images. No more. The orchard hangs out in lanterns. The dead come stumbling by in shrouds. Nothing can stay bound or be imprisoned. You say, end this poem here and wait for what's next. I will. Poems are rough notations for the music we are. So as I'm actually currently traveling around Austria, I did print out the pages for the reading, and I managed to print out 2 pages too few. So I'm going to start the reading by reading on the computer to begin with. Welcome everybody, my name is Joanna Godwin-Seidl, and I am your host this evening for a reading of 1001 Nights, and we are now on the 482nd night. Let me see if I can get closer a little bit. There you go. Now when it was the 482nd night, she said, "It has reached me, O auspicious king, that Abu Al-Hasan continued, now when I saw the leper seated in the prayer niche, I threw myself upon him and said, O my lord, crave thy company, and fell to kissing his feet. But he answered, this may in no way be. Then I began weeping and wailing at the loss of his company when he said, spare thy tears, which shall avail thee naught. And he recited these couplets. Why dost thou weep when I depart? Thou didst parting claim, and cravest union when we ne'er shall reunite the same. Thou lookest on nothing save my weakness and disease, and saidst, nor goes nor comes or night or day this sickly frame. Seest not how Allah, glorified his glory ever be, deigneth to grant his slave's petition wherewithal he came? If I, to eyes of men, be that only that they see, and this my body show itself so full of grief and grain, and have I naught of food that shall supply me to the place, where crowds upon my Lord resort impelled by single aim? I have a high creating Lord, whose mercies aye are hid, a Lord who hath none equal, and no fear is known to him. So, fare thee safe, and leave me alone in strangerhood to wone, for he, the only one, consoles my loneliness so lone. Accordingly, I left him. But every station I came to, I found he had forgone me, till I reached Al-Medina, where I lost sight of him, and could hear no tidings of him. When I met Abu Yazid al-Bastami and Abu Bakir al-Shibli, and a number of other sheikhs and learned men, to whom with many complaints I told my case, and they said, heaven forbid that thou shouldst gain his company after this. He was Abu Ja'far the leper, in whose name folk at all times pray for rain, and by whose blessings prayers their end attain. When I heard their words, my desire for his company redoubled, and I implored the Almighty to reunite me with him. Whilst I was standing on Arafat, one pulled me from behind. So I turned and behold, it was my man. At this sight, I cried out with a loud cry and fell down in a fainting fit. But when I came to myself, he had disappeared from my sight. This increased my yearning for him, and the ceremonies were tedious to me, and I prayed Almighty Allah to give me sight of him. Nor was it but a few days after, when, lo, one pulled me from behind, and I turned, and it was he again. Thereupon he said to me, Come, I conjure thee and ask thy want of me. So I begged him to pray for me 3 prayers. First, that Allah would make me love poverty. Secondly, that I might never lie down at night upon provision assured to me. And thirdly, that he would vouchsafe me to look upon his bountiful face. So he prayed for me as I wished, and departed from me. And indeed, Allah hath granted me what the devotee asked in prayer. To begin with, he hath made me so love poverty that by the Almighty there is naught in the world dearer to me than it. And secondly, since such a year, I have never lain down to sleep upon assured provision. Withal hath he never let me lack aught. As for the third prayer, I trust that he will vouchsafe me that also, even as he hath granted the 2 precedent for right bountiful and beneficent in his Godhead, and Allah have mercy on him who said, Garb of fakir, renouncement, lowliness, his robe of tatters, and of his rags, his dress, and pallor ornamenting brow as though 'twere wanness, such as wanning crescents show, wasted him prayer athrough the long-lived night, and flooding tears ne cease to dim his sight. Memory of him shall cheer his lonely room, the Almighty nearest in nightly gloom. The refuge helpeth such fakir in need, help e'en the cattle and the winged breed. Allah, for sake of him of wrath is fain, and for the grace of him shall fall the rain. And if you pray one day for plague to stay, 'twill stay and bait man's wrong and tyrants slay. While folk are sad, afflicted one and each, he, in his mercy's rich the generous leech. Bright shines his brow, as though regard his face. Thy illuminated heart shines by light of grace. O thou who shunnest souls of worth innate, departs thee, woe to thee, of sins the weight. Thou thinkest to overtake them, while thou bearest follies which slay thee whatso way thou farest. Didst what their worth thou hadst all honour showed, and tears and streamlets from thine eyes had flowed. To catarrh troubled men flowers lack their smell, and brokers ken, for how much clothes can sell. And so haste, and with thy Lord reunion sue. And haply fate shall lend thee aidance due, rest from rejection and estrangement stress, and joy thy wish and will shall choicely bless. His court wide open for the sewer indict, one very God, the Lord, the Almighty might. And they also tell the tale of the Queen of Serpents. There was once of yore, and in ages time long gone before, a Grecian sage called Daniel, who had disciples and scholars, and the wise men of Greece were obedient to his bidding and relied upon his learning. Withal had Allah denied him a man-child. One night, as he lay musing and weeping over the lack of a son who might inherit his law, he bethought him that Allah, extolled and exalted be he, heareth the prayer of those who resort to him, and that there is no doorkeeper at the door of his bounties, and that he favoureth whom he will without compt, and sendeth no supplicant empty away. Nay, he filleth their hands with favours and benefits. So he besought the Almighty, the Bountiful, to vouchsafe him a son to succeed him, and to endow him abundantly with his beneficence. Then he returned home and calmly knew his wife, who conceived by him the same night. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased to say her permitted say. Now when it was the 483rd night, she said, It has reached me, O auspicious king, that the Grecian sage returned home and knew his wife, who had conceived by him the same night. A few days after this, he took ship for a certain place, but the ship was wrecked, and he saved himself on one of her planks, while only 5 leaves remained to him of all the books he had. When he returned home, he laid the 5 leaves in a box and, locking it, gave the key to his wife, who then showed big with child, and said to her, Know that my decease is at hand, and that the time draweth nigh for my translation from this abode temporal to the home which is eternal. Now thou art with child, and after my death wilt haply bear a son. If this be so, name him Hasib Karim al-Din, and rear him with the best of rearing. When the boy shall grow up, and shall say to thee, What inheritance did my father leave me? Give him these 5 leaves, which when he shall have read and understood, he will be the most learned man of his time. Then he farewelled her, and, heaving one sigh, departed the world and all that is therein. The mercy of Allah the Most Highest be upon him. His family and friends wept over him and washed him and bore him forth in great state and buried him, after which they wended their ways home. But few days had passed ere his widow bare a handsome boy, and named him Hasib Karim al-Din, as her husband charged her. And immediately after his birth, she summoned the astrologers, who calculated his ascendants, and drawing his horoscope, said to her, Know, O woman, that this birth will live many a year, wherefrom, and he escape, he will be given the knowledge of all the exact sciences. So saying, they went their ways. She suckled him 2 years, then weaned him, and when he was 5 years old, she placed him in a school to learn his book, but he would read nothing. So she took him from school and set him to learn a trade, but he would not master any craft, and there came no work from his hands. The mother wept over this, and the folk said to her, Marry him. Haply he will take heart for his wife and learn him a trade. So she sought out a girl and married him to her. But despite marriage and the lapse of time, he remained idle as before and would do nothing. One day, some neighbours of hers who were woodcutters came to her and said, "Buy the son an ass and cords and an axe, and let him go with us to the mountain, and we will all of us cut wood for fuel. The price of the wood shall be his and ours, and he shall provide for thee and his wife with his share." When she heard this, she joyed with exceeding joy, and brought her son an ass and cords and hatchet. Then carrying him to the woodcutters, delivered him into their hands, and solemnly committed him to their care. They said, "Have no concern for the boy. Our Lord will provide him. He is the son of our sheikh." So they carried him to the mountain, where they cut firewood and loaded their asses therewith, then returned to the city, and selling what they had cut, spent the monies on their families. This they did on the next day and the third, and ceased not for some time, till it chanced one day a violent storm of rain broke over them, and they took refuge in a great cave till the downfall should pass away. Now Karim Al-Adin went apart from the rest into a corner of the cavern, and sitting down, fell to smiting the floor with his axe. Presently he noted that the ground sounded hollow under the hatchet, so he dug there a well and came to a round flagstone with a ring in it. When he saw this, he was glad, and he called his comrades, the woodcutters. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased saying her permitted say. Now when it was the 484th night, she said, "It has reached me, O auspicious king, that when Hasib Karim al-Din saw the flagstone with the ring, he was glad and called his comrades, the woodcutters, who came to him, and finding it was fact, soon pulled up the stone and discovered under it a trapdoor, which, being open, showed a cistern full of bees' honey. Then said they one to the other, 'This is a large store, and we have nothing for it but to return to the city and fetch vessels wherein to carry away that honey and sell it and divide the price, whilst one of us stands by the cistern to guard it from outsiders.' Quoth Hasib, 'I will stay and keep watch over it till you bring your pots and pans.' So they left him on guard there, and, repairing to the city, fetched vessels, which they filled with honey, and loading their asses therewith, carried them to the street and sold the contents. They returned on the morrow, and thus they did several days in succession, sleeping in the town by night, and drawing off the stuff by day, whilst Hasib abode on guard by it, till but little remained. When they said to one another, 'It was Hasib Karim al-Din found the honey, and tomorrow he will come down to the city and complain against us and claim the price of it, saying, "'Twas I found it, nor is there escape for us, but we let him down into the cistern to bail out the rest of the honey and leave him there. So will he die of hunger, and none shall know of him." They all fell in with this plot as they were making for the place, and when they reached it, one said to him, "Oh, Hasib, go down into the pit and bail out for us the rest of the honey." So he went down and passed up to them what remained of the honey, after which he said to them, "Draw me up, for there is nothing left." They made him no answer, but loading their asses went off to the city and left him alone in the cistern. Thereupon he fell to weeping and crying. There is no majesty and there is no might save in Allah, the glorious, the great. Such was his case. But as regards his comrades, when they reached the city and sold the honey, they repaired to Hasib's mother, weeping, and said to her, "May thy head outlive thy son Hasib." She asked, "What brought about his death?" They answered, "We were cutting wood on the mountaintop when there fell on us a heavy downfall of rain, and we took shelter from it in a cavern. And suddenly thy son's ass broke loose and fled into the valley, and he ran after it to turn it back, where there came out upon them a great wolf, who tore thy son in pieces and ravined the ass." When the mother heard this, she beat her face and strewed dust on her head and fell to mourning for her son. And she kept life and soul together only by the meat and drink which they brought her every day. As for the woodcutters, they opened them shops and became merchants and spent their lives in eating and drinking and laughing and frolicking. Meanwhile, Hasib Karim al-Din, who ceased not to weep and call for help, sat down upon the cistern edge, when behold, a great scorpion fell down on him. So he rose and killed it. Then he took thought and said, "The cistern was full of honey. How came this scorpion here?" Accordingly, he got up and examined the well right and left, till he found a crevice from which the scorpion had fallen and saw the light of day shining through it. So he took out his woodman's knife and enlarged the hole till it was big as a window, when he crept through it, and after walking for some time, came to a vast gallery, which led him to a huge door of black iron bearing a padlock of silver, wherein was a key of gold. He stole up to the door, and looking through the chink, saw a great light shining within. So he took the key and, opening the door, went on for some time till he came to a large artificial lake, where he caught sight of something that shimmered like silver. He walked up to it, and at last he saw, hard by a hillock of green jasper, and on the hilltop, a golden throne studded with all manner of gems. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of day and ceased saying her permitted say. So, dear friends, on my travels, it's a very, very good night from me. I hope you enjoyed tonight's reading. I can't wait to see how this story develops. It's one of those ones with magic and jewels and wonderful things. So I hope you all really enjoyed the reading this evening. Without further ado, I'm going to say good night to you. We will be back on Tuesday, where Saman hopefully will be able to read. And I wish you many, many blessings. Have a beautiful, beautiful weekend. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. And thank you very much for tuning in tonight. Okay, bye-bye. Take care.